Welcome to your Anime Senpais.
I'm Richard.
And I'm John.
And you know what? A few days ago, John and myself, we actually watched Never Ending Man, Hayao Miyazaki. It was a documentary about Miyazaki last couple of years. And yeah, we just want to kind of give our reaction to it. So let's get started.
So, Richard, speaking of Miyazaki, what's your favorite Miyazaki film?
For the longest time, I was kind of debating between Nausicaa and Arrietty, but
Ooh,
I think not Nausicaa. Just I don't know, just something about it just really resonates with me. What about you,
Yeah.
John?
I mean, I really like Howl's Moving Castle.
Mhm.
That's like I guess my second favorite, and probably Spirited Away. I really enjoy just the simplicity, I guess, of it. But a lot of his films have this charm to them that
Yeah.
you look at him and you can identify his style right away.
Right,
So,
yeah. Like, have you seen all his stuff?
No,
Okay.
I think we talked about that in the theaters. I've only seen about probably half of it, probably even less than because I think you've seen more. Because I actually haven't seen Nausicaa. I want
Okay.
to, but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got the DVD or
Oh,
Blu-ray. I got the
ooh.
Blu-ray. So
Gotcha.
if you want to borrow it. But yeah, I think I've seen most, if not all of his stuff. Not well. I should say most of his feature
Newer.
films.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't seen there. So let's talk about the documentary for a second. So one thing about this documentary is that it takes place like starting from like 2015 initially, but it
Mhm.
also shows us like his what was it
Time.
2013 when he announced when he was going to retire.
Was that when it was? It's 13.
2013
Okay.
was when he announced he was
So
retiring.
yeah, it starts with that, and then it kind of jumps a little bit and kind of shows him in retirement.
Right. Yeah.
And he was busy at work anyway, preparing for a short film.
Yeah.
And
Like he when he retired, he said he was retiring from doing feature films. Yeah. So he still was doing like smaller projects. Like I think we see him when they go to visit him in his house. Like he's just doing like some drawings for the Studio Ghibli's museum. Yes, yeah. So like we see him kind of doing some drawings for that, and yeah, and he talks about retirement, and he's like you could tell like okay, he's old now, but you could tell like as a creator he still wanted to create,
Yeah.
right? Like that drive was still there.
Yeah, the only thing that held him back was the aging body.
Right, yeah. And it's funny because he kept bringing that up, how like, oh, I'm so old now, and doing a feature film just takes too much, of my energy and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you could still tell that the drive is still there.
Yeah, and I do have to admit, watching this guy every day, the routine that he kept down, I felt personally lazy. I was like, man, the stuff this guy does every day and pushes himself, the drive he has,
Yeah.
and then he complains about how old he is and
Right.
how he can't do as much. And
Right.
I'm, wow, man, I need to step up my game,
Right.
I guess. So
Right, yeah. But so, anyways, like I said, like we see him kind of doing the drawing and all that stuff, and the people that's filming the documentary, they were talking to him about like doing this like short film, I think, for the museum too, I believe.
yeah,
It was like Boro the Caterpillar.
Caterpillar, yeah.
And so. And the interesting thing about this was that Miyazaki, who, if I remember correctly, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but if I remember correctly, he's never been big on CGI. Like I think even in his retirement
Yeah.
announcement, he said something like, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he basically said something like, the days of how I do things is pretty much over. CGI is pretty much the new thing, and I can't keep up with that. Something along those lines. Is
Yeah, something like that. I mean, he's never been a big fan of them. They are in certain movies like Ponyo, I think, had a little bit of CGI in it, I believe.
I don't know.
But, I mean, not a whole lot. Like, if he used it, it was, like, so sparingly. It was, like,
Mhm.
it was just something he would do. But I guess in this one, he actually
Right.
he felt a need for it. Actually, he's like,
Yeah.
with the way the hairs are on this caterpillar and the way it responds and moves, I just can't do it by drawing. And I was like, wow, he actually acknowledged maybe a limit to his drawing ability, maybe the animation ability. I don't know what the drawback was, but he said, this is where I think CGI will be the biggest advantage to all this. And,
right. And it's interesting too because, like I said, he's never really embraced CGI up until this point, at least. And so, going into this, like he was very, very open minded, and like you could see, like he was like when he was talking with his CGI artists, he was watching them what they do, and like he was
he was trying to understand because he wanted to just jump in and thought, man, I almost think that he wanted to jump in and almost take over because he thought, if these kids can do it, maybe I can do it if I learn it enough. But
and you could tell like there was parts of him that showed was like the caterpillar, breaking out of its shell or whatever.
Yeah.
And like he was trying to explain to the artist like what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then they tried to interpret it as best as they could, but even then you could still tell like he wasn't satisfied. Like and I think this is where Miyazaki was, I guess, maybe led astray, because I get the feeling that maybe before this project started, he thought like either he thought this or maybe he was led to believe that CGI was like, just made things so much easier, and maybe it does in comparison to hand-drawn anime, but I think he just kind of had it in his mind like, this will be like the I don't know how to even explain, like the
I guess once I get started, it'd be a lot faster of a process.
Right?
Maybe?
Yeah, maybe something along those lines. And he just I don't know. I think he had just this great expectation for CGI, but as with all things, it even with something even if it's something that makes things faster, there's still a lot that goes into it, as we've learned doing these videos. I remember we talked about, it's like, oh yeah, well, all we got to do is we just got to film it and then we're done. And then
yeah, I wish it worked. I mean, it's getting better. Don't get me wrong.
Right? But I think that's what he was thinking too. Like, we could just do this short film and it'll be great.
If I remember right, most of the film focused on that part where the worm comes out of the egg, right?
Right.
And just, I mean, I would almost say 2/3 of the film was just kind of on that one scene.
Yeah.
And the fact that they animated his neck movement wrong.
Yeah.
And he would explain how, he was just, the amount of detail he pays attention to is just so amazing.
Yes. And actually, it's interesting you brought that up too, because he said something along the lines of how current animators, and maybe this is generalization, but how current animators, they focus more on what's going on instead of why things are doing what they need to do. And it makes sense too. Like when he said that, I just kind of sat back and was like, he's got a point actually. And I'm not criticizing current animation at all whatsoever, but when you think about those, like, he was talking about, like, okay, for example, going with the caterpillar, one of the things he criticized them about was the way the caterpillar was like moving across the leaf, I think, or whatever it was, the surface of whatever it was moving across. And he mentioned how, like, the way that they animated it in the CGI, like the hump wasn't going like far up. It was just kind of like it was just very slight, and you have to understand too, like at this point this was just a rough draft of what they were showing him too. So, but he was just like, okay, well, you need to make the hump kind of go like, this or whatever, because
and the face doesn't move.
Yeah, the face doesn't move, and the way the legs were moving was kind of not to his expectation. Basically, what he was seeing was just sort of like a very unnatural way of this caterpillar moving. So he kind of was explaining to him, like, okay, look, this is how a caterpillar needs to move. This is how a caterpillar typically moves.
He had a caterpillar in his office, and he would just sit there with a magnifying glass and just watch it.
Right.
And I don't think most of the younger CGI people did that. They were just like, well, we know how we know how a caterpillar moves.
Right. Well, see, yeah, they were relying on the algorithms and whatnot, which, again, I'm not saying that's wrong or right or whatever. I'm not a film student. I don't know these things, but it is interesting though how we see that, and then we see it from Miyazaki's point of view, and
Yeah.
you have to admit, like, Miyazaki, like some of the things that he was doing or talking about was maybe out of date. But at the same time, Miyazaki is a well celebrated director and animator and stuff like that. So, this guy knows what he's talking about, right?
Yeah, I think he even made the joke, that they ask how I do it, and I just draw whatever I want.
Right.
I don't care what people want.
Yeah.
I draw it the way I want to see it.
And he even talked about like how he wasn't worried, like when he works on a project, he's not worried about the story at first. He just wants to draw, like you said, like he just wants to draw what he wants to draw,
Oh yeah.
So it's really interesting just to kind of get that perspective. And with that being said, I also want to bring up the point where so yeah, there was like the company that came in, and I don't know if they were like programmers or artists or whatever they were, but they were like talking with Miyazaki, trying to show him, like, it was like a artificial intelligence, I think.
Yeah, artificial intelligence driven program to where I guess they were wanting artificial intelligence to take over CG animation.
Right.
And they would put an object in there, and I think from what they were describing, it would learn what the objects were. Like if you told this was the head and arms, it would eventually try to figure out an algorithm to make it move. But I guess it needed a time of learning and an adaptation period or something, because the object or the body they had in there,
yeah, that was so.
It looked like something out of Silent Hill, just kind of coming at you, rambling.
And to be fair, like I know what they were trying to do. Like they were saying like, oh, they were showing this to Miyazaki and a bunch of other different people too, but primarily Miyazaki, and they were showing this creature. It was moving really unnaturally, and they were saying, well, this could be like a zombie for a horror game or something like that. But as soon as I saw that thing, I was just like, oh my gosh, you guys, that's like,
you didn't get your right target audience.
He really didn't. They really didn't, because man, Miyazaki just tore into them too.
And it was such a father, just disciplining a child whenever he did it, because he was like, I know. And whenever I see your video, I think of this person I know that had a handicap.
Yes.
And he said, every time I see your video, I think of that person now and how he could barely raise his arm up to give me a high five. And it was like that cold, stiff hand against mine. And that's all I can think of is that person and how disabled he was. And it was polite, but at the same time, by the time he was done, the camera panned to those three animators, and they looked like three small children that had just gotten like in trouble and didn't know what else to say. I mean, their faces were so blank, and all they could do was stumble and apologize, and
they and also try to explain too. But it's like you could tell that they were crushed. Like it's like if you were an artist for a comic book and Stan Lee just tears into you like, oh, this is complete trash. I don't know why you.
Why'd you show this to me?
Right, exactly. So like just kind of having that type of feeling, like, oh my gosh, my idol just does not like anything that I'm doing right now. So and again, to their credit, I understand what they were trying to go for, but I think they should have done something else besides that zombie thing, because that's not really Miyazaki's thing at all. So
and really quickly, I actually want to go back to a point you made earlier. One thing I thought that really stood out really well was the fact that he pointed out that whenever animators make people, they make characters, where Miyazaki likes to make humans. You need to treat them as a person.
Right.
And that was where like he would critique someone's just sketches. He'd say, well, why is this person carrying this bag a certain way? Have you never seen them carry this bag? They don't pick it up that way.
Yes.
When you cradle something, you cradle it like this. What? Have you never went out and saw real life? Do you go through life not looking at things?
Right. And actually, he was even criticizing himself too, because like he would be like, and I don't know if this was in the flashback or if it was like as he was working on this film, but like he would like kind of go. There was a point where he was just kind of going back to hand drawing, and he would do like this, and he would even criticize himself. He'd be like, the shirt doesn't fold like that. I don't know why I did it that way or whatever. And He's like, it's really interesting, like the amount of detail that he goes into, and it shows too. Like if you watch any of his movies, it shows like how much detail he puts into it, and I think that's why I don't remember where I heard this from, but actually even the movie kind of shows this too a little bit in the flashback, but. You could see like he's very critical, especially back then, before his retirement, like very critical. Like you said, he talked to that one guy, and he was just like, why is this person picking up this bag like this? They don't do that, And he even, I think he said something like, again paraphrasing, I think he said something like, do it right or just quit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was very stern with something.
Yeah.
I don't even think that was a new one. I think that was an older flashback, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was like when he was working on. It wasn't his 2013 film, but the one before that, I think. But anyways, I've always known he's had that reputation though, because he's had people complain about him or whatever, and so, and which was also kind of interesting too, watching him work on this short film, because even though he was very critical, like he was still kind of open-minded too, up until the point of that point of that one company. As soon as that one company showed, I was just like, man. As soon as that company showed that one video, like his expectations just for CGI especially just went like.
Well, and really at the beginning of it, it was kind of funny because in some ways I could relate to him, because whenever he first tried CGI, there was so many times throughout the opening where he was just like, I quit. We don't need it. I'll just go back to hand drawing because this isn't working. I mean, I don't know how many times they showed him, this isn't working. This isn't working.
Yeah.
And he'd go back and he would start hand drawing stuff just to give them more detail for their CG stuff.
Right. Yeah, because he couldn't really explain it to them. Like he was like,
yeah.
He could do it to a degree, but like he would. Again, going back to the hump thing for the caterpillar, he would actually sit down and just be like, okay, this is what I'm talking about, and then he would show them, and they would just kind of flip through the pages like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, like so much detail.
Right.
And it was like they would laugh about it, and they were like, well, I guess he did. They were kind of like, well, I don't think he's thinking we understand or something. He's putting so much detail into this, and I was like thinking to myself, well, yeah, that's why he's doing it.
Right. Yeah.
He wants you to do it better.
Right. So, that being said, it was interesting that he was keeping an open mind, but I think at the very end of it all, he was just like, you can't, what's the phrase? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah. So, and I think he said at the very end that he's going to do another feature film.
Yeah, it was kind of odd. This whole thing's been a spoiler, but the way it ended was so abrupt for me. It was almost like, really? It almost turned me off from the whole thing afterwards, because it was like the end of it, we had drawn on this whole short film, and he had kind of built up his, the fact that he draws inspiration, he's getting motivated. He was actually like, oh, I don't know if I should be saying this yet, but I want to do another feature film. And it just kind of trails off into, well, there starts the credits. And
yeah.
I was like, oh, well, no outro, no,
right.
This is a culmination. This is maybe the ideas he's working on. It was nothing. It was just a cold credits start rolling up through, and
I think for me, I was expecting to actually watch the Caterpillar movie,
or to actually see they did show a little, like a couple, maybe like 5-10 seconds of it. It wasn't much, but yeah, I wanted. And what they did show was amazing.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it would have been nice to end it with that in the credits.
Right, but see, like I said, I think I was expecting that, but after thinking about it afterwards, I was like, they never actually said that they were going to actually show that particular film, because I think that film was specifically for the museum, like it was like exclusive to the museum itself. But even still, like, we live in America, we can't really get access to the museum from over here. Well, so it would have been nice to actually be able to see that, but like I said, I thought about it afterwards. Like, they never really actually said that, so I guess it kind of makes sense that they didn't show it. But you said,
it was a documentary on the making of it. I guess we got what we came for. So
right, and overall, it was a good movie. Like, other than the abrupt ending,
it was really good.
And just having that insight of like this one man's experience and him kind of like going through all this and like trying to embrace this new way of doing things, and just it was really, really fascinating to just kind of watch him do all that.
Really, the way it was done, I wish they do this for more, maybe artists or developers or animators. I mean, I would have loved something like this for Stan Lee if he did, if he was still doing comics toward the end, which he wasn't really drawing or anything, but like just a personal insight into their life. You know, it was just so unique.
Yeah, but like I said, overall it was good. I don't want to say movie, I guess documentary.
Documentary, yeah.
Yeah, and really fascinating just to kind of just watch all this, because again, he's getting up there in age, and who knows how long he's got.
Yeah, and throughout it, we would talk about his different close associates dying, and he would just, I mean, it was so weird. He would just very coldly be like, "Well, that's how it goes."
I mean, yeah, and he would even say like, I'm. You could tell he was really sad about it too, because he kept saying like,
should have been me.
It should have been me. I should be, because I guess he was probably the oldest of all of them. Mm-hmm. But he kept saying like, I can't believe I'm still around, that sort of thing, and but yeah, it was just really fascinating movie.
Oh yeah,
for one of the greatest, I guess, directors and animators of all time. So, but anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed our review, and
if you did, consider subscribing if you haven't already. And
be sure to like too.
Yeah,
and,
be sure to like it.
If you guys have watched the movie too, be sure to leave some comments. Let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, and I think that's about it. Overall, though, it was a great documentary. So just kind of want to let you know, though, overall it was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
very fascinating.
Yeah. So let's get out of here and do some more videos. So.